first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and Joey for hosting this expedition. It's been great. It's been a great 3 weeks. The response has been fantastic. You know, yesterday was a great story written about the store by Tequila. She's actually here in the audience. So pick up AM New York and read all about the great work in the Village. Read all about the great stuff Joey's doing here at the Village Works. So this project, Science of the Pandemic, Resiliency of the City, started as I was photographing New York City at the beginning of the pandemic. So my job was a foot courier, and I worked for this company called Fly Over the City. And I was allowed to be outside and ride the trains because I was considered an essential worker. Otherwise, I would be at home like everybody else. So I started coming into the city right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was entering empty malls, empty subway cars, empty streets. It wasn't eerie at first. It was just silent. So usually when I'm coming to New York, it's really, because I live in Newark, it's really, busy. You hear cars, people walking, people talking. But at this moment in time, this was around the second week in March or the third week in March, when Governor Cuomo and Mayor DiBaggio put out executive orders that everyone should stay home. And MTA also put out, advisories for folks not to ride the trains, right? Because, the pandemic was killing a lot of people. And so, as I came into the city, I would call my office, which is in Boston, by the way. So they get orders for New York City couriers in the Boston office, and then they dispatch it to me here in New York. So they have about 15 couriers in New York, but their main base is in Boston. And so I was picking up jobs from a few places regularly. The biggest places was a couple of companies were transporting laptops between employees. So as an example, I would they'll say, go to Newark, pick up a laptop and take it to somebody in the Bronx. So basically these employees, they're at home working, and they're sharing laptops, right, to continue their work. And I would be the conduit to transport it. So I would go to Newark to the Bronx. I could go from Manhattan to Brooklyn. I could go from Brooklyn to Queens. So they could send me virtually anywhere in the 5 boroughs where I was needed. And then I was doing a lot of work for a medical office on the Upper East Side, around East 77th Street by Lenox Hill Hospital. And I was delivering prescriptions to people's homes. So as I was traveling on the trains and walking around the city, I noticed a lot of different things and how quiet the city was. But since I was already a street photographer, I had already done some books on bike messengers. I did a book on graffiti culture. I did a book on subway musicians. So I was kind of well versed in street photography, and I debated in my mind whether I should document this stuff, because I knew it was a tragedy that we were in, and I just decided, you know what, I'd be doing a disservice to photography if I didn't photograph it. And so that became my operation mode, to okay, I need to document this, even though it's a tragedy. And I didn't want to exploit it either. So all this work you see, I'm trying not to exploit the situation. I'm trying to show what it was like working in the city during these times. So I think I have about 15 photographs upstairs, and then downstairs I have 5. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take you through each photograph, give you the date when I took it, and then give you an idea of like what was happening during, the COVID and when everybody was staying at home. So downstairs there's like 5 photos. So one photo is a 7-Eleven store on West 4th Street. They had the close sign, right? But there were a whole bunch of UPS stickers. So UPS kept trying to deliver, even though the pandemic was still there, it was closed, and they kept putting stickers on the 7-Eleven store, right? So I photographed that, and I thought that was pretty special. So I photographed that on April 18th, 2020, at 3:52 p.m. So that was kind of like what was happening in the city on April 18th at 3:52 p.m. in my area where I was, and that was West 4th Street. The next photo I have like downstairs was Park Avenue South and 28th Street, and it was void of traffic. So you never see New York without traffic, but during the pandemic there was virtually no traffic. So I photographed that empty street on Park Avenue, and I could see with my eyes from 28th Street and Park Avenue South to 45th Street and Park Avenue how there was no traffic out there, relatively none, all the way to the MetLife building, and that was very startling. But I wanted to show like what the streets were like, and I took that photo on Park Avenue South, March 26th to the 20th, March 26, 2020, 5 p.m. And that was what's happening at that particular time on 28th Street and Park South. Then another photo downstairs is the Bedford Nostrum station, void of commuters. So virtually no commuters at this station in Brooklyn, Bedford Nostrum. The G train goes there. Some of you may know it. And the platform was completely empty. So I photographed that station March 26, 2020 at 2:13 p.m. Right? So, and these are the kind of things I'm seeing while I'm making my deliveries, right? Seeing these empty subway stations, empty streets, so it was quite interesting. And then my first person that I saw selling face masks on the street was on April 28th. So you might remember the government CDC at first wasn't sure to make everybody wear masks. So my first month during COVID, while I was making deliveries, I didn't wear a mask, right? So when the CDC gave the instructions that everybody should start wearing a mask, that's when I started wearing my mask. Like almost a month after the lockdown lockdown had occurred, right? And so that photo was done at 23rd Street and 6th Avenue on April 28th at 5:20 p.m. Right? So that was a street vendor selling face masks for like $1 to make sure people get their face masks, right? And then on that last photo in the basement is it's a Target store in Tribeca, and I photographed a makeshift sign that Target made. It wasn't a fancy sign. It looked like they just got a piece of large cardboard, got a magic marker, and put "wear a mask" inside the store, right? And I said, wow, why is this big store doing that? They got plenty of money to make a good sign, but I guess they didn't do it in time enough, so they did a makeshift one. And I photographed that one at Target in Tribeca, April 21st, 2020, 4:35 p.m. So a lot of these we haven't even gotten to May yet. So that's April and March. And all those pictures are like downstairs. I'll stop for a second, see if anybody got any questions about anything they saw downstairs. You know, I'll answer it. If not, I'll go.
I think it's very fun that you documented with such specificity as to the date and even the time. I love that, especially in situations like, I think, in a train car, for instance, or somewhere else where you would see how empty it was, and you give what time it was. So anybody who's like a New Yorker or interested, oh yeah, like, you know, 3 months before, it would be TV to people at that time or whatever. So it's just like, very interesting thing.
Thank you. No, that's great. I'm glad you saw that. That's kind of like the purpose of me photographing it.
Well, it's a diary. It sounds like it's a visual and written diary.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because in my heart, I know our neighbors. A lot of them are passing away. Some are our relatives as well. So I have to be, at least I want to be sensitive to that fact that, you know, this is not a normal situation. People are losing their lives. So I always thought it was important. But it was important also for me to document it so that if someone's doing research 10 years from now and they want to know what was happening outside in New York, they may be able to look at my material.
Yeah, your work could end up like in the museum in the city of New York or something like that.
Yeah, I wanted to add that at the beginning with the mask business, if you remember, they weren't pressing people to wear masks so much because there was a shortage of masks, and the masks were going to the nurse and the hospital personnel, and so the only masks that the general population could wear are ones that they made themselves, because the commercial, so they didn't push for everybody to wear masks in part because the supply wasn't there.
So also is it the M13 mask also that?
The N95.
N95, okay.
That's right. And they would cost $5 a piece or $7 a piece, and you have to take a hike to a hardware store to buy them. There was a big run on masks, and it was hard to get there.
So it was bigger than the CDC saying everybody to wear masks, and there was a general shortage of them. Okay. Right.
Actually, they kind of lied to us. I just realized it recently that back then they didn't tell us, don't go run and buy all those masks because the people in the healthcare industry need them and there's a big shortage.
That's right.
So, even that guy who I like, I forget his name, what's his name? Fauci.
Fauci, yeah.
I like Fauci, but this is like the dark side of Fauci. You know, like he hid this from us on
Trump
purpose.
may have hide it.
Well, I don't think, no, I don't blame Trump for that. I blame Fauci for that. I don't think Trump was smart enough to say
He
that.
was on a leash during that time.
I don't know.
He survived Trump. He has a badge for
Well, he's
that.
from way before Trump. Apparently he was from back during HIV and all that. But the thing is, unfortunately, there are people who are not as forgiving as we are, who now they say, well, look, they lied to us at the beginning. You know, they claimed that it wasn't necessary to wear masks, but that's not because they wanted to save the few masks that there were for the healthcare people. And I remember for months I just wore a scarf, but that's also so I could drink my iced coffee with a straw underneath without any trouble. Whatever, the first summer. But that's beside the point. But the thing is, they did obfuscate. Obfuscate, is that the word? They did that. And I don't blame them because we didn't get sick and die, but you know, but it was true that the people who were going nuts and the anti-vaxxers and all those crazy people, and apparently I know a couple of them that I didn't know I knew, they remember all these things and go crazy over it.
Well, yeah, it's tragedy, and it's good that you guys have an opinion, because I think we all need to kind of talk about it, you know, because it was an incredible experience for all of us.
We were
So,
able to order masks online through Amazon, and But the problem was, there was the they mentioned the N95, then there was the fake N95, so
Right.
you didn't necessarily know if you were getting the right thing, but it helps that she's in the healthcare profession, we were able to get a little bit as well.
So when did you start wearing your mask? Like a
We
month
actually started
in?
wearing them like within I don't know, we had to do shopping, so we got them at least for that the following week.
Oh, so okay, so
We were good from the start.
you was good from the start. Okay, all right.
Yeah, because, I mean, we didn't, the key thing was, if you went into those huge stores like Costco or Trader Joe's or something, they were running out of supplies. But if you lived in smaller neighborhoods and you went to the smaller stores, you were usually better off. You would wait outside online, but they were usually better in stock than the big stores.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting.
Toilet paper.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes.
toilet paper was.
So we had no trouble getting our basics because we didn't go to those big stores.
Oh, great.
And
That's
people thought going to the big stores was a plus. No. It's the mom and pop places who I've always supported.
interesting. So I'll talk about these photos upstairs now. So this first one over here is a street performer. He's been on the streets for a long time, this guy. And he performed, and I don't know his economic situation, but if he was making money before the pandemic by his street performing, I can assume he went back on the streets to see if he can get more money. But there's nobody on the street. So I didn't get the logic of it. So I took a picture of it. I have another picture of him in another book I did, but this one's just weird. It's over at on 23rd Street.
You know what the logic is? This is what he knows how to do, and he didn't know how to do anything else.
Oh, okay.
That's what, because I've encountered the same situation after an earthquake. And people are out on the street selling artwork. Nobody, the day after an earthquake. And why? There's no tourists there. Why? Because this is what they do. They don't know how to do anything else.
So that's their
That's the
income.
logic.
That's the logic.
At least
Okay.
that's how I interpret the logic.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I just took it as of what it was. I mean, but I've seen this guy perform for many years. So you're right. It's just what they do, right? Okay. So he was performing and the Flatiron. That's the Flatiron Public Plaza. That was April 24th, 2020. So that's almost like 4 or 5 weeks right after the executive order. And that was like 4:15 p.m. Almost near rush hour, but nobody's there. So I photographed that. What really took me to the next level was this Times Square shot, which is an empty Times Square station, right? Nobody's there. It's just next, to me that's next level. That tells me like,
It
we
looks
really,
so clean.
we're in a real emergency, and even the AM New York bins are empty. So it really tells you that it's really, this is some sad stuff.
Because there were nobody was riding the subway, so why would you put any papers in?
Right, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's true. I know, but I'm saying, it affected them.
But there is news and someone wants to generate the information.
No, they were still publishing the paper, but they weren't putting it in place where
Right,
there
it
was
wasn't coming out to distribute,
But
right?
did they limit their schedule? So instead of,
Did they? I don't know.
you don't know, okay. All right, so anyway, so this one here is a little closer. The Black Lives Matter is more closer to like June. So that's right after, a couple weeks after George Floyd was murdered, right? There were huge protests in the city as well as all around the world. And what's interesting, when this happened, it almost felt like there was no COVID almost, because people were outside, right? Some people were wearing masks, but still, there was like so many people coming outside, that you kind of didn't feel like there was a pandemic. But people were outside, so this particular situation where IFC sent a photograph that was June 15th, 2020, 5:48 p.m. So today I actually thought about this photo, and the marquee says Black Lives Matter,
Yeah,
right?
that's great.
And then you got this spray paint, Black Lives Matter, right on the windows, on the plywood. It has African Unite. So in my mind, I'm wondering if they hired somebody to do that so that maybe they don't attack the theater and ransack it. You know, I don't know. But it's interesting parallel to have Black Lives Matter on your billboard, billboard.
Yeah, I hope they.
And then you have,
They've got ransacked, I really.
I don't know, like so many stores got
They're not
ransacked,
rich, yeah. Mostly the really high end.
high-end the rich stores, yeah.
This is just a little.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't hear a lot of stories of looting during this whole thing. But if you remember Blackout of '77, a whole bunch of places in New York got looted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you didn't hear a lot in this. Even 9/11, they said they were looting stores down there. Huh?
Soho got looted.
Yeah, well, we're on
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That's where I live.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Soho got hit pretty hard, yeah.
But see, the looting didn't have anything to do with Black Lives Matter. They had been targeting
Opportunity.
Right, opportunity,
It was that
right.
the guys were driving around with jeeps.
Yeah.
Vans.
And
You
then
know what I
they,
wonder about that? What do they do with those high-end goods? Do they sell it on eBay or what? What do they do with that stuff? Where?
so then all the people were looting, were bringing them to the guys with the cars and the vans and stuff.
I totally forgot about
So
that.
a lot
They did Soho, they did Macy's.
And what's her name? Ocasio, what her name is?
AOC.
AOC. She was saying about all that having to be looted. She was saying, she was making it sound like it was the guy from the Miserable stealing a loaf of bread. She said, well, they need to eat.
Oh,
They need to eat, so they have to.
she's giving some sort of reason for it.
It's
Really, I missed
it's
that
all
part.
to put bread and butter on the table. I mean, it's interesting. I like her in some ways, but like I think she goes over the deep ends in some other ways.
It's the reactionary to the Trump thing because the
Yeah,
thing is
Trump-
you go one
Trump
extreme,
was
the other
in power
extreme,
then.
and this is how you get nothing done.
So my question is, how did you guys feel about the Black Lives Matter event? Because you saw marching all over. If you watch CNN, it was 24 hours a day, but it wasn't just New York. It was like all over the world. Did you see like a reckoning? Or I felt
The
like,
60s had come back finally.
so you think it was needed?
Wasn't it? I was finally, I've been waiting 30 years for action in this circle.
It's more than
Wow.
30. It's more than 30
I was so
years.
excited.
50 years.
50 years.
60 years.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was so
People
excited.
take action.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the next photo is Fifth Avenue, and that's right by St. Patrick's Cathedral. And what was interesting about Fifth Avenue and the other rich parts of Manhattan, it was very dark because all the stores were closed. So, and there's no traffic. So in my mind, I'm saying, man, I don't know what you call it. I mean, the pandemic is some sort of powerful event because to shut all this down, it takes something mighty to happen. So I know Carmel used to talk about God bless New York City citizens listen to the orders because they didn't have guns to us. It's like there's no military people out here telling people to stay off the street. Everybody just listen and follow the directions. But for me as an African American, I'm like, wow, this is really some significant stuff, you know. Also, again, people are dying, so I'm always in the back of my mind. It's very serious, but since I'm not a medical professional, I probably don't understand the significance of like what's really happening and what Dr. Fauci was really saying, right? that this is a real thing, and you need to follow directions, right? So when this was empty, it was just the most amazing thing. You know,
When did you take that?
that one was Rockefeller Center, April 27th, 2020, 2:28 p.m. Right? 2:20.
You know what's interesting, I'm just realizing, it was so soon after the pandemic that the wildlife didn't start taking advantage yet. Like, after a while, I think there were more birds out, you know. Okay, we didn't get foxes and raccoons like we heard about in the news, and bears and other places, but, you know, the birds were chirping a little more loudly and everything. At a certain point in time, did you hear this? The bees came back bigger and better than ever. Remember a couple of years ago, they were worried that the bees were dying out? Well, during this past year, I think
Well, because there was less pollution.
less pollution, it saved, you know.
Wow.
It's sad because of so many people died. It's horrible that it took that.
I was actually concerned those murdering hornets were coming, because they said they killed off a lot of beehives. Yeah.
So
So
that's-
they were worried that they were gonna come to the States.
So that's interesting. I never, you know what, I never thought about that part, but for you guys to mention it, it's great because the pandemic had nothing to kind of do with climate change and the earth, but we live in a world where there's animals, bees, dogs, right? We all need water to live. So, and then there's the climate too, right? But but that's interesting that you guys were thinking that, because I didn't think
Because
that.
the lack of human activity probably did a lot to save other species.
Oh!
It gave
I
them
heard-
space to come back.
I heard that in Venice during the year of COVID, people were suffering greatly in Italy, but the canals of Venice got clean due to the lack of human
No pollution.
interaction. They got
Wow.
clean like they had never been in a long, long time.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that into the conversation. So the next photo is Papaya Dog, and I really thought that was special as well. You know, New York City is such a cultural city. I love the culture. That's why I love Joey's store, because there's so much culture here that when you see something that's cultural and part of the New York experience, and you see it go dark, it's a sad moment, you know. And so when I saw that, it's like, okay, this is some serious stuff, and that increased me to like, okay, I need to shoot as much as I can while I'm making these deliveries, right? So and I made my way my photography works. I'm eclectic, so I don't go in kind of looking for stuff. I'm like, if I see something unique, that's when I'm going to photograph it, because it adds to my portfolio. So I'm looking for things that are unique and special that maybe 100 other photographers don't have. But in this one, I wasn't too worried about it, because there's not that many photographers on the street walking around. They were still home. So, but this was on 14th Street, I think right by First Avenue or
Yeah,
Avenue
First
A. Oh, First Ave, yeah. And that was right a couple of weeks after the executive order. So I don't have the exact date of the executive order, but it was March 23rd, right? And the executive order came like March 9th or 10th, but I gotta look that up so I can be as accurate as possible. But that's March 23rd, 5:18 p.m. And that's when I saw the Papaya Dog looking like that. The next one was pretty interesting too, because as I came, I lived in Newark, so I take the path into the World Trade Center, you know, and so my first part was to go through the Oculus, right? And so every day I would go into the Oculus, it would be empty, and the American flags were flying, right? and all the stores were closed, bathrooms were closed, it's just virtually empty. And it wasn't eerie yet. I think my experience in the Oculus wasn't, I didn't see it as being eerie. I saw it more as this is a serious pandemic. People are following instructions. So one of the days when I was coming home, because I come into the World Trade to start work, and then coming home, I go to the World Trade again. So this particular situation, I saw from the second floor that a great photo of how empty the Oculus was. They had 2 American flags going. And this is when, like, the title of this show, the resiliency of a city, is that the city's just trying to fight this thing. And they're putting the flag out to kind of give spirit to everybody in the city that, okay, we need to stick together and fight. And the flag was something, you wanted to honor. And that eventually we were all, as New Yorkers, get through this whole experience. And so the Oculus was April 14th, 12:32 p.m. So that's about a month after the executive order. This one on the right is basically something everybody sees, which is this sign where it tells people to stand 6 feet apart. So that's in all the train stations almost all around Manhattan and Brooklyn. So the sign is almost like 6 feet. So you want to stay this far apart. So I didn't put down the station where that was, but these signs were like everywhere. And that's one of my newer ones. So that was like February 12th, 2021. Now, how did you guys take the 6 feet apart thing? Because I mean, people would approach me and like, you can't get that close, or you gotta put on your, like most things is you gotta wear your mask, right? You go in the store, security guard, they'll bother you, say, hey, put your mask up. What was your kind of experience, wearing your mask and 6 feet apart? Did any of you guys get talked to?
At this moment in time, I have mixed feelings because I have a vaccination and I have my mask on. I so bad when I take it off and be free. And when this began, I still would say I was walking around with no mask. I was free, and I just, for some reason, said, like, if this is that serious, there's nothing I can do about it. And as much as I did about it already, I still can't do anything. So.
There are a lot of people like that about not wearing a mask, not taking the vaccine.
Oh no, I took the vaccine. I have the vaccine in Moderna.
Yeah.
But I'll still say that, them telling me that if I price the Delta variant, people are still getting COVID with the vaccine. Truth of lumber. It's confusing. Like I said, I want to have my mask on, I want to have my mask off, I have respect for the next person over. I also want to be free.
Oh, you want to be free? Okay.
Yeah, I don't, none of these white people bother me with their mask on or mask off. Honestly, but I think for my mask that I'm helping the next person out from sleeping away. Because before that, I was using it as a style, so it's cool.
The mask is real uncomfortable for me, but
I think he hit on a key thing, though, that a lot of people think of their own rights, but other people's rights are just as important as your own. So you always have to look at that two sides of the coin. You can't always just look at yourself, you gotta look at the next person. What might be an inconvenience for you may be something that might be something that works out better for someone else or a whole group of people. So you have to kind of balance it between yourself and what you see is better for everybody too.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, one of the worst things was I was flying home from Minneapolis, and I pull my mask down for a second, and this guy said, yo, put your mask back on, like he was ready to fight. So it's because there was a point where people were getting in fights. Did y'all ever see news stories?
Still happening.
They're getting in fights over.
It happened a day or two ago on the subway, I heard about it.
Right.
Yeah.
A young white man who was probably a MAGA guy, Make America Great Again, was like right in the face of an older woman who was wearing a mask, and he wasn't wearing a mask. And I guess she said to him, you should be wearing a mask. And they were both white, I think. And he was menacing her. And other people, of course, people nowadays, of course, have their cell phones, so they took images of him on the news. That's how I know about it.
Oh.
And nothing happened to anybody. I mean, he didn't kill her, he didn't knife her, he didn't, but it was horrible.
Was it in the subway itself?
It was in a train, in a subway train. He was like standing over her, what I saw in the footage, like menacing. He was, he was a lot bigger than she was. She was sitting down. Of course, if I was her, I probably would never have said anything to him. If it was me in the subway, if somebody's acting crazy or bad, I would just quietly go to the end of the train, the subway car, and at the next stop, I'd quietly go in the next car. That's what I did that yesterday when I visited my mother in Brooklyn, and somebody was acting a little weird, not to me, but just somewhere in the car. I thought, I don't need this. I just very quietly moved along. But it's not easier, maybe for an older woman like older than me, but she was maybe, I don't know, people are different. But I'm not going to get confrontational with anybody.
Just get up and move.
Yeah.
Just move.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, she's so old, she
Right,
can't
I
even
just-
move.
Maybe she wasn't, or maybe she was used to telling younger
So
people.
probably don't try
Telling
to
them
tell
off.
crazy.
Telling them, right.
Yeah,
On the
but he
subway.
probably, she didn't know he was crazy. Some people you could tell they're off, but she probably thought that he was just like her nephew.
She told him to put a mask on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah,
say, "Who's your nephew?"
and he got in her face. It was terrible.
Goddamn, you're not my mom or nothing, like, what are you talking about?
I have this one supporter on my block screaming out, every day it's a different race. Well, you're not that white, you're not allowed in this country playing old US music, playing, this is investments, playing
Yeah,
old,
that's a you look at that's
I was born and raised in investments.
that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. No, it tells you you could feel the tension in the city, right?
It's in the air.
It's in the air. Yeah, it's in the air. So the next photo is a Black Lives Matter photo. It was down by Foley Square, and someone put a sign: "White violence is silent." White silence is violent, right? And that was during a Black Lives Matter protest in Foley Square. So it was a makeshift sign. So I photographed that because I just thought that was like a powerful statement. And it's not that many phone booths anymore. So it's interesting that phone booth is even there, So, and that was July 4th, 2020, 5:35. So, yeah. The next one is just, I was commuting from Brooklyn to somewhere, making a messenger delivery, and I just happened to look out, and I saw a great image of the train moving, essential workers, everybody's wearing masks, everybody looked like they got to get to work, and it just looked like they were following the mandate exactly how it's supposed to be. Only essential workers ride the trains. And what was interesting, through the PA system, MTA would give periodic warnings every 20 minutes. You would hear, "You're not allowed to ride the train if you're not an essential worker." And that was quite interesting. I recorded some of them, but I just thought how serious this pandemic was, and this particular train scene was just showed me how people follow instructions and wear the mask, and I tried to capture that scene, and that was let me get the date on that one. That was April 20th. April 2nd. Sorry. So it was about 3 weeks after the executive order that I took that
Question,
shot.
but what about the homeless people? Did you, when when you were as an essential worker, when you were riding the subways with other essential workers, were you also sometimes encountering homeless people on the train?
Yeah, I counted it like this, and we didn't get to it yet, but
Oh,
that
I see.
that photo there is the World Trade Center.
Right, oh, you didn't get it, okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I'll come to it. Yeah, so that's the World Trade Center. But I did see a lot of homeless taking over whole cars.
Right, I saw it.
Oh, I mean, not a small spot. The whole, they took the whole car.
Wow, that's why they closed down the system 2 hours a night.
I did a lot of walking, and then you would see the homeless people on the street. It was really obvious that there are no other people on the street, the only ones on the street were the homeless.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that next photo is the new station they built, or the new, they built a new center, the Fulton Center. And that, as I entered the terminals, everything was empty. The platform was empty. That to me was like unheard of. Just to see a hub that's like that, that's with, thousands and thousands of people completely empty. So I tried to capture that moment. Just, you would see the platform empty, nobody going through the terminal. So that was a real powerful moment that I caught, just an empty Fulton Street terminal. And that was April 27th, 2020. So these are like primary images of what it was like in Manhattan, parts of Manhattan, on how, the business district was void of commuters, workers, and stuff like that. Because as a courier, my general market is the New York City business districts, right? And then occasionally they'll send me out to outer boroughs. So you'll see like a lot of photos just dealing with the Manhattan business districts. This one here is, the next one is a graffiti sign that's on plywood. A whole bunch of artists decorated that plywood with like messages of hope on there. And I took a picture of that, and that was right by, that was around 27th Street and 5th Avenue. And that was on June 25th, 2020. So that was kind of like right after the George Floyd incident. So you started to see a lot of murals about Black Lives Matter, and a lot of hate murals as well about hating the police and stuff like that. I'm not going to spend time saying those words, but I saw a lot of that out there as well. So right after George Floyd got killed, the first like 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of artists came out and they painted almost anything in sight, with messages of hope or negativity towards the police. And so that's just like an image of that. And then this is early. These are 2 women with masks and gloves. Now, I never wore gloves. Some of my friends were telling me to wear gloves, but I never wore gloves. Did you guys, anybody who ride the subway wore gloves during the pit? Okay. So people, all right, yeah, okay, so yeah. But people were taking this really seriously. That, because people were thinking they could get the virus by touching a pole or something. And I don't think you can get the virus like that. Yeah.
Can of rice saw one was about $20.
Yeah.
If not
You
more.
can find it.
Yeah.
If you can find it.
Right.
I saw people on the subway in full hazmat. I saw full hazmat
Yeah.
that you wore in the contagion
That's really bad.
on the subway like that. Man.
That is serious. That is serious. That's taking it to the next level. So that was April 2nd at 5:04 p.m. So now we get the homeless guy. So this is amazing. I don't know how this guy got all of his goods down into that subway car. But he took the whole car and he was resting, and he got all of his like living stuff right there. And it was just
There were people doing that in subway stations, 23rd Street.
Yeah.
The uptown side, there was somebody literally taking up half the subway platform. Yeah, exactly.
That's,
Boy,
oh yeah, the car, yeah.
fixed it up.
Yeah, right.
Even got, some of them even got furniture up there.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody even got furniture.
Wow.
That's right.
But there was somebody in front of the new school building on Fifth Avenue and 13th Street. I heard about it, and he had a lot of street furniture right in front of a college building where they had an overhanging, I don't know what it's called. Fifth Avenue.
I know what it said.
It's that good for the rain.
Yeah, they had like an overhanging thing. So he was like, he was just living there.
I'm gonna be some scaffolding there.
You know, they had they had something before COVID.
Yeah.
They had something before COVID.
Well, people were already doing that?
It was just for the students or whoever happened to be in the neighborhood. They had put some installation that, looking back on it's kind of eerie because it was kind of the way the restaurants are now. They had an installation in the street.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Like.
And it was like people could sit there.
Oh, you're right. I remember that now.
Oh, yeah.
Where they would take like a parking slot
Right.
and they put seats in it and stuff, but they didn't,
But it was before COVID, so,
Right.
maybe it's
Well,
like.
it wasn't as nice as those restaurants had at the
Well, some of them were, really decked out.
Well, in the restaurants, outdoor dining is amazing. These guys are running their business, so they got to make it comfortable for their customers. So no sense building a small tent. You need to really make something so people can eat, and they have a business. So I don't talk too much about all these businesses, but there are a lot of people that were hurting, including me. So like, if I didn't even get a little money from unemployment, I could be hurting too. So
But there was one of those outdoor restaurants that made the news recently because they started putting in a second level. And that immediately got in all the 5 o'clock news, like, no way, you're gone, guy, you gotta take that down.
They got to take that down.
It was gonna fall apart and it was.
Some of these places started building like completely built structures, like, a whole, like almost like an entire building outside, calling that outdoor dining, when it was really outdoor dining.
Exactly. They after initial comments, they're not paying any internet, I don't think.
No, they are paying, that's the problem, is that it's a land grab and they're getting free space from the city.
Yes.
But you know what, since we don't drive cars,
No,
we
it's
don't
funny.
care. In fact, we like it. I like it because that makes it harder to keep the cars. And there should be fewer cars.
They're not paying,
They're not, the cars are
We don't
furious.
drive with
they're
that.
not paying for
Furious.
that.
The people
They're not paying for that space.
That's right. That's right. That's right. They're not
But when
paying
they
for it.
do pay, the people who eat there are paying tax on their meal. Okay, so what is it, 8.5%?
That's the
Whatever it is.
restaurant trying to get
So the
money.
government, the city is getting a little money out of it, whatever.
Yeah, so-
You look,
Well, look, but it's fine for them to try to recoup some of their losses, come to a
Right.
And then they have to, if they're gonna use that space, they have to make it.
I did want to see somebody sleeping early in the morning in one of those.
Yeah, no,
places
here's the-
where they-
Yeah.
Build those sheds for restaurants, why can't you build sheds for homeless?
Homeless.
Well, the city wasn't
Confined
building, it was the
space.
individual restaurateurs were building each individual little thing to do.
I know.
And they're not very, I'm sure it's like the three, what is it, the children's story where they build one house and it comes down, they build another house and finally build one made out of brick. I forget the name of that story, but three little pigs, these are something like that. Something like that. But like these, they're kind of Mickey Mouse. I heard
Say Little Red Riding Hood.
I've heard that sometimes there are rats under there that attracts vermin.
Wow.
People that live near these, I don't.
Outdoor dining.
don't live right next to the sheds. It's like down the block.
I have to walk through a restaurant every day. I walk around.
You have to walk through?
Well, yeah, because they take up the
Oh,
whole
they take
side.
up the whole side?
Yeah, okay, that's
They
very
should give you
interesting.
at least
Moving
15
right along.
They should
Very
give you 15
This
minutes.
is not the community board meeting.
Yeah, no, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's okay. But it is,
Yeah, we're-
we are talking about the pandemic and outdoor dining is part of it, right? So you know, we are talking about that. So that photo was photographed April 10th, 2020, 3:23 p.m. World Trade Center. That's an E-train, right? And I won't spend a lot of time, but you know MTA, because the homeless took over the subway, they closed it down at night. And they kicked them all out.
Right.
Which is a whole,
the subway?
so they can clean the subway. But that's a whole nother chapter, right? So, but,
Weren't the subways, you never saw them as clean as you ever saw.
I agree.
Well,
There was a spot you could eat
I-
off the floors.
I totally agree. I almost was in favor of them doing that permanently.
Oh, it was.
Wishful thinking, wishful.
Well, where did the homeless go now?
oh, that's good. Where did the homeless go?
To your neighbors.
Gracie mentioned.
Well,
Well,
That's
well,
Well,
a lot of them were like laying dead out in the street. Not dead, but they look dead. I used to see them all the time. They're just laying right on the sidewalk. I've never
they're
seen
still
that.
there.
They're still there.
They're all over.
They're all over the place. Yeah.
I saw somebody a couple of weeks ago, it looked like a young guy, but I couldn't see his face because he was literally in a big cardboard box sleeping on Hudson Street, right next to one of those kiosk things where they could plug in their computer.
Oh, yeah.
Those weirdo things that I hate.
Yeah, sad. So this one here was one of the first photographs I took. And so this is it's the passageway from 6th Avenue to 7th Avenue.
14th Street.
14th Street, right? And
17th.
I saw this man, like, it was empty. First of all, I saw it was empty. But then I saw this one man coming, and I just took my iPhone out, took a picture, super quick, and I just thought it was just a photograph of what my experiences were going to be like working out here. And it's just one man, he's wearing a mask in this huge passageway. And I just thought it was so unique. And it just made me think, okay, this is going to be some experience that I'm going to be making deliveries, and the city's going to be virtually empty. So, but that was one of the first ones I shot.
When did you take that?
That one was March 27th at 2:11 p.m. So again, this is like when Como first gets the executive order out. There's still debates on whether to wear a mask or not. Probably on that date, I probably wasn't wearing a mask, and this guy was. So he knew what he was doing. So, but that was very interesting. Again, you see the metro things are empty. So, because I'm a big metro person, I always look for them to read. So when I see those empty, it's kind of sad that I got nothing to read.
It's crazy because
Yeah.
I remember a few days before that March 18th, that I got a letter. I was working a restaurant job, like this, where you walk into this, everything that's going on, here's your public employment, here's this,
Oh.
All of a sudden, we got a ghost town.
Right. A ghost town, right?
It was like around what time, that one? Around what time? Because it's empty.
Oh, yeah, it was March.
Back to myself.
Initially, it was
March.
scary.
You said April, I thought you said April 20th?
That was March 27th, 2:11 p.m. 2:11, 2 like in the afternoon, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, yeah.
It's so empty.
Yeah, super empty.
It's interesting that one because it looks almost abstract. There's like a lot of triangles. And then there's that one figure, kind of like a Giacometti type figure you're out
Yeah,
there.
it looks
out
like,
there alone.
it could be out there apocalypse, like just one person
The apocalypse.
by
exactly.
himself.
And it's black and white,
Yeah.
and unlike all the other pictures, as empty as they are, they're teeming with life in comparison
Yeah.
to that one.
Yeah. So, and the last photo is of a person who camped out in City Hall. So there's tents all around them. And so it was called Occupy City Hall. And I think it was for about a month.
What does the sign say?
Huh?
What does the sign say?
It says, shut down Rikers.
Shut down Rikers?
Yeah. Shut down Rikers.
Yeah, I went to Occupy City.
Oh, you went
I
there?
went there.
Okay.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alternative confinement.
Right. So there's a movement to shut down Rikers because of the abuse that goes on over there. So this gentleman just happened to be out there holding a sign. What was interesting, they were sleeping there. So, but about a couple of months afterwards, the police did a raid and just put them all out at night, like 3 in the morning.
Well, that's when they always.
Yeah, to get everybody out. So
They don't want the media to be there.
oh, okay.
That's why they do it in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Straight up.
They don't want channel 2 news to show the police getting critical.
Right. So, yeah, but that, so that kind of wraps up all the photos and gives you what the city was like during this critical time. We're still in the pandemic phase, so, obviously we got a lot of us got vaccine cards, right? So certain places, and you still gotta wear your mask, so we're still in it. But what's significant is that all this is going on and it's very silent, right? So it's not like Afghanistan where there's bombs and guns, right? This stuff is silent, people are dying, and you can get hurt by this thing, by COVID-19. So it's a very...
And the variants.
Very right. So it's a deadly time, and
And they still haven't figured out if it came from the live animal market or if it came from a lab where they were studying coronaviruses.
2015.
I'm sure it came from that lab. And now there's even another issue. Did it not only come from that lab, but was it human modified, sort of like a horror movie, like were they trying to kill us humans? And by the way, right, that's the only conspiracy theory that I have never mentioned to anybody before. But I'm a little bit intrigued by it, but I don't really think about it too much. I'd rather have it here. But the thing is that when we had those few masks, when Dr. Fauci told us, no, don't wear masks, it's not that important right at the moment, because they really needed it for the health professionals, which I sympathize with. But also, where were we getting these masks from? From China.
Yeah.
From China, and they were keeping most of them for themselves, which is understandable. And if you ever saw any pictures, you were talking about a hazmat, somebody bring all those pictures from China, any pictures anybody's ever seen in the news from people in China, those health professionals, they're head to toe.
Yeah, that's right.
They're Mickey Mouse in comparison to
They're
that.
experimenting with all kinds of
So they've won.
But you guys, we're in the United States. But if you look at how it affected the whole world, this is really special.
Affecting the ING, it's still going on.
It's still going on. Still going on. Yeah. So it's big. It's just really big. And so, but I was blessed to be able to be out there. I'm still living, obviously, right? So to tell this kind of story. Thank all you guys for coming out. It's been a great,
interactive.
It's been a great conversation.
It's like a group therapy.
Yeah, I really wanted to hear what other people.
Group.
I really wanted to you don't leave, yeah.
No, we don't have it.
I don't have a second home.
Mars.
Yeah, this is great. So thanks, Joey.
This is a lot of fun.
Thanks. Thanks again, Joey. It's been a great, guy. We have photos are available, prints, and then we have some catalogs if anybody's interested. So thanks. And a limited edition. So after the 100's gone, that's it.
After
Thanks.
I'm gone,